The bread was still warm when Evelyn Garcia's fingers closed around it. And that single moment of carelessness would change everything she thought she knew about surviving in a world that had shown her nothing but cruelty. It was June of 1883 in Chloride, New Mexico Territory, and the scorching afternoon sun beat down on the dusty main street with merciless intensity. Evelyn had not eaten in 3 days, her stomach a hollow cave of grinding emptiness that made her hands shake and her vision blur at the edges. The bakery's back door had been unlocked, an invitation she could not refuse, and she had slipped inside with the practiced silence of someone who had learned that invisibility meant survival. Her dress, once a respectable calico print, now hung on her thin frame in tatters, the hem caked with the red dust that seemed to coat everything in this harsh landscape. She had the loaf pressed against her chest, already turning toward the door when a voice cut through the dim interior of the bakery's storage room. "That is the 3rd time this week someone has tried to steal from me." Evelyn froze, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. She turned slowly to face the man who stood in the doorway leading to the main shop, his tall frame backlit by the sunlight streaming through the front windows. He was perhaps 25 or 26 years old, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of strong coffee. His shirt sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms dusted with flour, and he held a rolling pin in one hand, though not in a threatening manner. "I am sorry," Evelyn whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse and dehydration. "I will put it back. Please do not call the sheriff, please." The man studied her for a long moment, and Evelyn felt her legs begin to tremble. She was 22 years old, and she had been on her own for 6 months now, ever since the stage she had been traveling on had been attacked by bandits. Her father, a merchant who had been relocating his business to Santa Fe, had been killed in that attack. Her mother had died giving birth to Evelyn, so when her father fell, she had found herself utterly alone in the world with nothing but the clothes on her back. The small amount of money she had managed to hide in her boot had run out 2 weeks ago. "How long since you have eaten?" the man asked, his tone not unkind. That is not your concern." Evelyn lifted her chin, trying to summon some shred of dignity despite the fact that she was holding stolen bread and looked like she had been dragged behind a horse for several miles. "It became my concern the moment you walked into my bakery," he replied. He set down the rolling pin and moved closer, and Evelyn instinctively took a step backward. He stopped immediately, raising his hands in a peaceful gesture. "I am not going to hurt you. My name is Isaac Foster. This is my shop, and unless I am very much mistaken, you are about to collapse from hunger and exhaustion." "I am fine," Evelyn lied, but even as the words left her mouth, black spots began to dance across her vision. The room tilted sideways, and she felt her knees buckle. Strong hands caught her before she hit the floor, and she found herself looking up into Isaac Foster's concerned face. Up close, she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes and the small scar that cut through his left eyebrow. He smelled like yeast and cinnamon and something else, something clean and masculine that made her acutely aware that she probably smelled like dust and sweat and desperation. "When did you last drink water?" he asked, already guiding her toward a chair in the corner of the storage room. "Yesterday, maybe. I do not remember." The words came out in a rush, and Evelyn realized with horror that tears were streaming down her cheeks. She tried to wipe them away, but they kept coming, months of fear and grief and hunger finally breaking through the wall she had built around herself. Isaac disappeared for a moment and returned with a cup of water. "Slowly," he instructed, holding it to her lips. "If you drink too fast when you are this depleted, you will make yourself sick." Evelyn obeyed, taking small sips even though every instinct screamed at her to gulp it down. The water was cool and sweet, and it felt like the most luxurious thing she had ever tasted. When the cup was empty, Isaac refilled it from a pitcher and made her drink half of that as well. "Now," he said, pulling up a crate to sit on so he was at eye level with her, "I am going to go into the shop and make you a proper meal. You are going to sit here and rest, and you are not going to try to run away, because if you do, you will not make it 3 steps before you collapse again. Do we have an understanding?" "Why are you helping me?" Evelyn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You should be calling the sheriff. I tried to steal from you." "The sheriff," Isaac said with a slight grimace, "is my cousin, and he is an ass who would throw you in jail without a second thought and feel righteous about it. As for why I am helping you—" He paused, studying her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. "Let us just say I have been hungry before. I know what desperation looks like, and I also know that no one steals bread because they want to but because they have to." He stood and moved toward the doorway, then looked back at her. "I need to know your name." "Evelyn," she said after a moment of hesitation. "Evelyn Garcia." "Evelyn," he repeated, and something about the way he said it, careful and deliberate, made warmth spread through her chest. "I will be back in a few minutes. Rest." True to his word, Isaac returned shortly with a plate piled with food. There was fresh bread, still warm, slathered with butter. A thick slice of roast beef, cold but tender. A wedge of cheese, sharp and creamy. A handful of dried apricots. And another cup of water, along with what appeared to be weak tea. "Start with the bread and tea," he instructed, setting the plate on a small table beside her chair. "Give your stomach time to adjust before you tackle the rest. I will be in the front if you need anything. We close in an hour, and then I need to hear your story." "I cannot pay you," Evelyn said, shame burning in her cheeks. "Did I ask you to?" Isaac's expression was gentle but firm. "Eat, Evelyn Garcia. Everything else can wait." He left her alone then, and Evelyn forced herself to eat slowly, even though her body screamed at her to shovel everything into her mouth at once. The bread was the best thing she had ever tasted, pillowy soft inside with a perfectly crisp crust, and the butter was sweet and rich. The tea helped settle her stomach, and by the time she had finished half the plate, she felt almost human again. Through the doorway, she could hear Isaac moving about the shop, the murmur of voices as he served customers, the clink of coins exchanging hands. She should run, she thought. She should take advantage of his kindness and disappear before he could ask questions she did not want to answer. But something kept her in that chair, something more than just physical exhaustion. Perhaps it was the way he had looked at her, without judgment or pity, but with simple human kindness. Or perhaps it was the fact that she was so very tired of running, of surviving, of being alone. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon when Isaac finally closed the shop. She heard him lock the front door, count out the day's earnings, and move about cleaning up. When he finally came back to the storage room, she had finished most of the food and was feeling more clear-headed than she had in weeks. "Better?" he asked, pulling up the crate again. "Much better. Thank you." Evelyn set down the empty plate and folded her hands in her lap, trying to appear composed despite her ragged appearance. "I suppose you want to know my story now." "Only if you want to tell it," Isaac said, "but it would help me understand how to help you." So Evelyn told him. She told him about her father, about the stage robbery, about wandering into chloride with nothing and no prospects. She told him about sleeping in the abandoned mining shack on the edge of town, about the odd jobs she had tried to find, the way people looked through her like she did not exist once they realized she was destitute. She told him about the hunger, the fear, the growing certainty that she would not survive much longer in this harsh place. Isaac listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When she finally fell silent, he was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as if he was chewing on something difficult. "The boarding house on 3rd Street, he finally said. "Mrs. Patterson runs it. She is always looking for help with cooking and cleaning. The pay is not much, but it includes room and board, and she is a fair woman." "She will not hire me," Evelyn said flatly. "I went there 2 months ago. She took one look at me and said she could not have someone of my appearance around her respectable establishment." "She will hire you if I vouch for you," Isaac countered. "She buys all her bread from me and she values my opinion. But first, we need to get you cleaned up and into some proper clothes. My sister is about your size. She lives in Santa Fe now, but she left some dresses here when she married last year." "Why are you doing this?" Evelyn asked again, unable to comprehend such generosity from a virtual stranger. "What do you want from me?" The question seemed to offend him, and for the first time she saw a flash of something hard in his eyes. "I want nothing from you except to see you safe and fed and able to stand on your own 2 feet. Is that so difficult to believe?" "Yes," Evelyn said honestly. "In my experience, people do not help without expecting something in return." "Then your experience has been with the wrong kind of people," Isaac said firmly. He stood and held out his hand. "Come on. I live above the bakery. You can wash up there and we will find you something clean to wear. Then tomorrow morning, we will go talk to Mrs. Patterson together." Evelyn looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment. Every instinct she had developed over the past 6 months told her to be suspicious, to keep her guard up, to expect betrayal. But there was something in Isaac Foster's steady gaze, something honest and true, that made her want to trust him. She placed her hand in his and let him pull her to her feet. The apartment above the bakery was small but comfortable, with a main room that served as kitchen and living area, and 2 bedrooms branching off from it. Everything was neat and clean, with simple furniture and cheerful curtains on the windows. Isaac showed her to the washroom and provided her with soap, towels, and a basin of warm water heated on the stove. "Take your time," he said, handing her a neatly folded dress in a soft blue fabric. "There are undergarments in the chest by the window if you need them. Everything was my sister's, so please do not feel like you are taking charity. Margaret would be happy to know her things were helping someone." Left alone, Evelyn stripped off her filthy dress and scrubbed herself clean for the first time in weeks. The water turned gray with dirt, and she had to refill the basin twice before she felt truly clean. Her hair was a tangled mess, and it took her the better part of an hour to comb through it with the brush Isaac had provided. When she finally slipped into the blue dress, she barely recognized herself in the small mirror on the wall. The dress fit almost perfectly, perhaps a bit loose in places where hunger had stolen her curves, but respectable and pretty nonetheless. When she emerged from the washroom, she found Isaac at the stove, stirring something in a pot that smelled heavenly. He looked up at the sound of her footsteps and went very still, his expression unreadable. "You look." He began, then seemed to lose his train of thought. He cleared his throat. "The dress suits you. Blue brings out your eyes." Evelyn felt heat rise in her cheeks. She could not remember the last time anyone had commented on her appearance in a positive way. "Thank you for everything. I do not know how I will ever repay you." "I told you, I do not want repayment," Isaac said, turning back to the stove. "But if you insist on doing something, you can help me with the baking tomorrow morning. I could use an extra pair of hands, and it would give you something to put on your experience when we talk to Mrs. Patterson." "I do not know anything about baking," Evelyn admitted. "I will teach you. It is not as complicated as people think. Mostly it requires patience and attention to detail. He ladled stew into 2 bowls and set them on the small table by the window. Sit. Eat. And then you are going to get a full night's sleep in a real bed. You can take Margaret's room. The sheets are clean. They ate in comfortable silence, and Evelyn marveled at how natural it felt to sit across from this near stranger, sharing a meal in the golden light of evening. Isaac did not press her with questions or make her feel like an obligation. He simply let her be, occasionally pointing out landmarks visible from the window or sharing small observations about the town and its residents. "The sheriff," Evelyn said at one point, remembering Isaac's earlier comment. "You said he is your cousin." Isaac's expression soured slightly. "Nathan Foster, my father's brother's son. He thinks wearing that badge makes him God's appointed judge of everyone's character. We grew up together, but we have never seen eye to eye on much of anything." "Will he make trouble for you, helping me?" "He would if he knew, but there is no reason he needs to know. As far as anyone is concerned, you are a friend of my sister's who came to town looking for work, and I am simply helping you get settled." Which is not even a lie, really, just missing a few details. Evelyn studied him across the table, this man who had caught her stealing and responded with compassion instead of judgment. He had a strong face, she thought, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. His hands were large and capable, scarred from years of work with hot ovens and sharp tools. There was something solid about him, something reliable that called to the part of her that was so tired of being afraid. "Why baking?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Most men in a place like Chloride are miners or ranchers or gunslingers." Isaac smiled, and the expression transformed his face, making him look younger and almost boyish. "I was a miner once. Spent 2 years underground breathing dust and swinging a pickaxe, and I hated every minute of it. My mother, she used to bake the most incredible bread. The smell of it would fill our whole house, and I remember thinking as a boy that if heaven had a smell, it must be fresh bread. When she died, I was 15, and I started baking to feel close to her again. Turned out I had a knack for it. When I had saved enough money, I left the mines and opened this shop. That was 4 years ago, and I have not regretted it for a single day." "She would be proud of you," Evelyn said softly. "Your mother, what you have built here, I hope so." Isaac's voice was quiet, tinged with old grief. "I like to think she would have approved of helping you too. She always said that the measure of a person was not what they had, but what they did with what they had. And she never could stand to see anyone go hungry." After the meal, true to his word, Isaac showed Evelyn to his sister's former room. It was small but cozy, with a comfortable bed covered in a quilt in shades of yellow and cream, a small dresser with a wash basin on top, and a window that looked out over the quiet street below. Evelyn stood in the doorway, almost afraid to enter, afraid that if she allowed herself to feel safe, something would come along to shatter that feeling. "I will be right next door if you need anything," Isaac said, pointing to the room across the narrow hallway. "We start baking at 4 in the morning, so I will wake you at 3:30. That might sound brutal, but you will get used to it. Most of the town does not even stir until 6, so we get the work done while it is still cool." "Isaac," Evelyn said, stopping him as he turned to leave. "Why did you really help me? The truth." He was quiet for a long moment, his back to her, his hand resting on the door frame. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Because 3 years ago my sister found herself alone and desperate in Santa Fe after the man she thought she loved abandoned her. She was too proud to come home, too ashamed to ask for help. She nearly died before a kind woman took her in, gave her work, helped her find her feet again. That woman saved Margaret's life, and I made a promise to myself that if I ever had the chance to be that person for someone else, I would not hesitate. So when I saw you in my storage room today, clutching that bread like it was the only thing standing between you and the grave, I could not live with myself if I turned you over to Nathan knowing what he would do. Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time they were not tears of despair, but of overwhelming gratitude. Your sister is lucky to have a brother like you. Isaac looked back at her then, and the expression on his face was so tender it made her heart ache. Get some sleep, Evelyn Garcia. Tomorrow is a new day, and I have a feeling you are going to surprise yourself with how strong you really are. He closed the door gently behind him, and Evelyn was left alone in the soft lamplight. She changed into the nightgown Isaac had left folded on the bed, another loan from the absent Margaret, and slipped between the sheets. The mattress was soft, the pillow smelled like lavender, and for the first time in 6 months, Evelyn felt the tight knot of fear in her chest begin to loosen. She had expected to lie awake, her mind spinning with everything that had happened, but exhaustion claimed her almost immediately, dragging her down into a deep, dreamless sleep. A gentle knock on the door woke her what felt like minutes later, though the clock on the dresser showed it was indeed 3:30 in the morning. Evelyn dressed quickly in another of Margaret's dresses, this one a practical brown cotton, and emerged to find Isaac already at work in the bakery below, the ovens radiating heat and the air thick with the smell of rising dough. "Good morning," he said cheerfully, as if it was perfectly normal to be awake at this ungodly hour. "I hope you are ready to learn. We have 200 rolls to shape before sunrise." And just like that, Evelyn Garcia began her education in the art of baking. Isaac was a patient teacher, showing her how to shape the dough with firm but gentle hands, how to judge when it had risen enough, how to score the tops so they would expand properly in the oven. Her first attempts were clumsy and misshapen, but he never criticized, only offered gentle corrections and encouragement. As dawn broke over chloride, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Evelyn found herself laughing as Isaac demonstrated the proper technique for braiding dough, his flour-dusted hands moving with practiced grace. It occurred to her that she could not remember the last time she had laughed, really laughed, and the realization was bittersweet. "You are a natural," Isaac said, examining the row of rolls she had just shaped. "These are excellent for your first try. By the end of the week, you will be faster than me." "I doubt that," Evelyn replied, but she could not keep the pleasure out of her voice. There was something deeply satisfying about working with the dough, about creating something nourishing and beautiful from simple ingredients. The morning rush started at 6, and Evelyn watched from the back room as Isaac served a steady stream of customers. She recognized some of them from her time on the streets, though they did not recognize her, cleaned up and respectably dressed. She saw the way people smiled at Isaac, the way children pressed their noses against the glass case to admire the pastries, the way he always had a kind word and often slipped a little something extra into the bags of customers who looked like they were struggling. Around 9, when the rush had died down, Isaac locked the front door and hung a "back in 30 minutes" sign in the window. "Time to go see Mrs. Patterson," he announced. "Are you ready?" Evelyn smoothed down the front of her borrowed dress and took a deep breath. "As ready as I will ever be." The boarding house was a 3-story building with a fresh coat of white paint and flower boxes in every window. Mrs. Patterson herself answered Isaac's knock, a woman of perhaps 50 with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She looked Evelyn up and down with undisguised suspicion. "Isaac Foster," she said coolly, "I was not expecting you until your regular delivery tomorrow. "I am not here about bread, Mrs. Patterson," Isaac said with his most charming smile. "I am here to recommend someone for the position you mentioned you were trying to fill. This is Miss Evelyn Garcia, a friend of my sister's who has recently arrived in town. She is an excellent cook and very hard-working. I thought she might be exactly what you are looking for." Mrs. Patterson's sharp gaze moved between Isaac and Evelyn, clearly trying to determine if there was more to this story than she was being told. "I see. And what experience do you have, Miss Garcia?" Evelyn had prepared for this question during the walk over. "I helped my father run his household for many years before his death, madam. I can cook, clean, and manage household accounts. I am punctual, honest, and willing to work hard." "Your father is deceased." Mrs. Patterson's expression softened slightly. "I am sorry for your loss." "What brought you to Chloride?" "I was traveling through when I found myself in need of employment," Evelyn said, which was true enough without going into the painful details. "Mr. Foster has been kind enough to help me get settled." Mrs. Patterson looked at Isaac with raised eyebrows. "Has he now?" "Well, Isaac Foster has never steered me wrong before. I will give you a trial period of 2 weeks. If you work out, the position is permanent. The pay is $12 a month plus room and board. You will have Sundays off after breakfast service. The work is hard and I run a respectable establishment, so I will not tolerate any nonsense. Are those terms acceptable?" "Very acceptable, madam. Thank you." Evelyn could hardly believe her luck. "You can start tomorrow morning at 5. Isaac knows where to find me if there are any questions." Mrs. Patterson started to close the door, then paused. "Miss Garcia, you look like you have had a difficult time of it recently. I appreciate honesty and hard work, and I am willing to give people a second chance if they prove themselves worthy of it. Do not make me regret taking Isaac's recommendation." "I will not, madam. You have my word." As they walked back toward the bakery, Evelyn felt like she was floating. A job. A real job with a room and regular meals and a salary. It seemed too good to be true, and she kept expecting something to go wrong, for someone to realize she was the same desperate woman who had been sleeping in that abandoned shack and revoke the offer. "Breathe," Isaac said, glancing at her with amusement. "You look like you are about to pass out again." "I cannot believe she hired me," Evelyn admitted, "just like that. Mrs. Patterson acts tough, but she has a good heart, and she really does need the help. Her last girl ran off with a traveling salesman 3 weeks ago, and she has been trying to do everything herself." Isaac held open the bakery door for her. "You have the rest of today to prepare. I suggest you get some rest while you can. Mrs. Patterson will work you hard, but she will be fair about it." The day passed in a strange, dreamlike haze. Isaac insisted that Evelyn spend the afternoon resting while he finished the day's work, but she found herself too keyed up to sleep. Instead, she helped him clean up the bakery, learning where everything was kept and how he organized his supplies. They talked as they worked, easy conversation that ranged from childhood memories to dreams for the future. Evelyn learned that Isaac had grown up in Chloride, that his father had been a miner who died in a collapse when Isaac was 12. His mother had taken in laundry to support the family, and both Isaac and Margaret had worked from a young age to help make ends meet. He spoke of his sister with obvious affection, describing her as fierce and independent and too smart for her own good. "She married a banker in Santa Fe," he said with a grin. "Poor fellow never knew what hit him." Margaret walked into his bank to apply for a loan to start a dressmaking business, and within 6 months they were engaged. She has the shop now, and from what she writes, it is very successful. I am proud of her. "You want that?" Evelyn asked. "Marriage, I mean. A family of your own." Isaac was quiet for a moment, his hands stilling in the dishwater. I always thought I would eventually, but it has to be with the right person. My parents loved each other deeply, and I saw what that looked like, what it meant. I would rather be alone than settle for something less than that." Something in his tone made Evelyn's heart beat faster, but she pushed the feeling aside. It was far too soon for such thoughts, and besides, Isaac was just being kind. He would help her get on her feet, and then their paths would diverge, as paths always did. That evening, Isaac made supper again, and they ate by the window as the sun set, painting the desert landscape in shades of orange and purple. Evelyn found herself memorizing details. The way Isaac's hair fell across his forehead when he leaned forward, the deep timbre of his voice when he laughed, the calluses on his hands from years of hard work. She told herself she was just being observant, not cataloging these things for later when she would need to remember this brief moment of kindness in a hard world. "I should go," she said after they had cleaned up the dishes. "I need to be at the boarding house early tomorrow, and I should not impose on your hospitality any longer." "Impose?" Isaac looked genuinely confused. "Evelyn, you are welcome to stay as long as you need. Mrs. Patterson said you could start tomorrow, but I am sure she did not expect you to move in tonight. Give yourself a day to settle." "I have already taken too much from you," Evelyn insisted, even though the thought of leaving this warm, safe space made her chest tight with anxiety. "You have been more than generous, but I need to stand on my own. You said so yourself." Isaac opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. "At least let me walk you over. It is getting dark." They made the short walk to the boarding house in silence, and when they reached the front steps, Isaac pulled a small parcel from his pocket. "Margaret left some other things that might be useful. Hairpins, stockings, a shawl. I thought you might need them." Evelyn took the parcel, her throat tight with emotion. "I do not know how to thank you." "You do not need to thank me," Isaac said softly. "Just take care of yourself. And Evelyn, if you ever need anything, anything at all, you know where to find me. My door is always open." For a moment, they stood there in the gathering dusk, and Evelyn had the absurd urge to reach out and touch his face, to assure herself that he was real and not some fever dream conjured by her desperate mind. Instead, she clutched the parcel to her chest and managed a smile. "Good night, Isaac Foster. You are a good man." "Good night, Evelyn Garcia," he replied, and there was something in his eyes, some emotion she could not quite name, that made her breath catch. "I will see you around town." She watched him walk away, his tall frame disappearing into the shadows, and then turned to knock on the boarding house door. Mrs. Patterson let her in with minimal fuss, showed her to a small but clean room on the second floor, and left her with instructions to be in the kitchen at 5 sharp. Alone in her new room, Evelyn sat on the narrow bed and allowed herself to cry. But these were not tears of despair or fear. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of something that felt dangerously close to hope. She had been caught stealing bread, and instead of punishment, she had been given a second chance at life. And somewhere in the space between desperation and hope, she had met a man who made her believe that kindness still existed in the world. The first 2 weeks at the boarding house passed in a blur of hard work and exhaustion. Mrs. Patterson had not been exaggerating about the workload. Evelyn was up before dawn every morning, helping prepare breakfast for the boarders, then cleaning rooms, doing laundry, helping with lunch and dinner, and falling into bed each night so tired she barely had the energy to undress. But she did not complain. The work was honest, the food was plentiful, and she had a safe place to sleep. More than that, she found she enjoyed the routine, the sense of purpose. Mrs. Patterson was exacting but fair, and she had a dry sense of humor that occasionally surprised Evelyn into laughter. The boarders were a mixed group, mostly miners and traveling merchants, but they were respectful and tipped well when the food was particularly good. Evelyn's cooking skills, honed during her years keeping house for her father, served her well. She could make a hearty stew stretch to feed 20 men, could bake biscuits that were light and flaky, could turn even tough cuts of meat into something tender and flavorful. Mrs. Patterson noticed, and by the end of the first week, she had put Evelyn in charge of the kitchen, with the older woman handling the front of house and the accounts. "You have a gift, girl, Mrs. Patterson said one evening after the dinner service had ended and the last boarder had retired to his room. "I have not seen cooking like this since my own mother passed. Where did you learn?" "My father employed an excellent cook when I was young," Evelyn said, scrubbing down the work table. "After she retired, I took over. I always enjoyed it, the alchemy of turning raw ingredients into something nourishing." "Well, you have earned your place here and then some. I am increasing your pay to 15 a month, effective immediately. And if you have any ideas for improving the menu, I am open to hearing them." The raise meant Evelyn could finally start thinking beyond mere survival. She began to save every penny she could, building a small nest egg against future uncertainties. She bought fabric and sewed herself 2 new dresses, practical garments for work but well made and flattering. She started to feel less like a ghost and more like a real person again. But despite her busy schedule, she found herself thinking about Isaac Foster far more often than was wise. She saw him occasionally around town, always with a friendly wave and a warm smile. Sometimes he would stop by the boarding house to deliver fresh bread, and those brief encounters became the bright spots in her week. They would chat for a few minutes while Mrs. Patterson inspected the delivery, talking about everything and nothing, and Evelyn would find herself smiling for hours afterward. It was dangerous, she knew, letting herself care about him. She had learned the hard way that caring about people only led to pain when they were inevitably taken away. But there was something about Isaac that made her want to take that risk, to believe that maybe, just maybe, good things could last. About 3 weeks after she started at the boarding house, Isaac showed up at the back door on a Sunday afternoon. Evelyn had just finished the breakfast cleanup and was enjoying her first few hours of free time all week. "Hello," he said, looking slightly nervous. "I hope I am not intruding. I thought, since you have the afternoon off, you might like to take a walk. I could show you some of the area around town, unless you have other plans, of course." Evelyn's heart did a ridiculous little flip in her chest. "I have no other plans. A walk sounds lovely." They headed east, away from the main cluster of buildings and into the scrubland beyond. The July heat was intense, but there was a breeze that made it bearable, and Isaac led her to a small creek that ran through a grove of cottonwood trees, creating a pocket of shade and relative coolness. "I come here sometimes when I need to think," he said, settling onto a flat rock near the water's edge. "It is the prettiest spot for miles around." Evelyn sat beside him, careful to maintain a respectable distance, and let herself relax for the first time in weeks. The water burbled over the stones and birds sang in the branches above. It was peaceful in a way that made her chest ache with longing for things she barely dared to name. "How are you settling in at the boarding house?" Isaac asked after a comfortable silence. "Very well, Mrs. Patterson has been good to me. She increased my pay last week. I am not surprised. I have heard nothing but rave reviews about the food there lately. People are saying it is the best place to eat in Chloride now." "That is an exaggeration," Evelyn protested, but she could not help smiling. "I do not think so. You have a real talent, Evelyn." Isaac turned to look at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. You have done an amazing job of rebuilding your life. I am proud of you. I could not have done any of it without your help, Evelyn said quietly. You saved my life, Isaac. I would have died if you had not shown me that kindness. No, Isaac said firmly. You saved your own life. I just gave you an opportunity. You are the one who took it and ran with it. You are the one who works yourself to the bone every day and never complains. You are the one with the strength and the courage to keep going despite everything you have been through. All I did was give you a meal and make an introduction. It was more than that, and you know it, Evelyn insisted. You saw me when everyone else looked right through me. You treated me like I was a person worthy of respect when I felt like I was less than nothing. That matters, Isaac. That matters more than you know. They looked at each other for a long moment, and Evelyn felt something shift between them, some invisible line being crossed. She knew she should look away, should retreat to safer ground, but she could not seem to make herself move. Evelyn, Isaac began, his voice rough. I need to tell you something. I have been trying not to say it, trying to give you space to find your footing, but I cannot keep it to myself anymore. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought he must be able to hear it. What is it? From the moment you looked up at me in that storage room, with your chin lifted and your eyes defiant even though you were terrified, I have not been able to stop thinking about you. At first, I told myself it was just concern, just wanting to help someone in need. But it is more than that. It has been more than that almost from the beginning. I care about you, Evelyn. I care about you in a way that has nothing to do with charity or kindness, and everything to do with the fact that you are smart and strong and beautiful, and every time I see you, I want to know you better. I want to know everything about you. Your favorite foods, what makes you laugh, what you dream about when you let yourself dream. I want to be the person you turn to when you are happy or sad or angry or scared. And I know this is probably too soon, too much, but I cannot pretend anymore that you are just someone I helped once. You are so much more than that to me. Evelyn stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. Her first instinct was to deny it, to protect herself from the vulnerability of wanting something this much. But as she looked into Isaac's earnest face, saw the hope and fear warring in his expression, she realized she was tired of being afraid. I think about you too, she whispered. All the time. When I am working, when I am falling asleep at night, first thing when I wake up. I tell myself I am being foolish, that you were just being kind, but then I see you and the way you look at me, and I start to hope that maybe. She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Maybe what? Isaac prompted gently, reaching out to take her hand. Maybe I am allowed to have something good in my life again, Evelyn finished, her voice breaking slightly. Maybe I am allowed to care about someone without them being taken away. Maybe I am allowed to be happy. You are allowed all of that and more, Isaac said fiercely, his thumb stroking over her knuckles. You deserve every good thing this world has to offer, Evelyn Garcia. And if you will let me, I would like to try to give you some of those things. I want to court you properly, take you to dances, buy you pretty things, introduce you to my friends and family. I want everyone to know that you are the woman who has captured my heart so completely that I cannot imagine my future without you in it. Tears were streaming down Evelyn's face now, but they were happy tears, joyful tears. Yes, she said simply. Yes to all of it. Isaac's face broke into the most beautiful smile she had ever seen, and then he was pulling her closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek with infinite tenderness. May I kiss you, please? Evelyn breathed, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and sweet and full of promise. The kiss was everything and nothing like she had imagined. It was soft and searching, a question and an answer all at once. Isaac tasted like cinnamon and coffee, and his hand in her hair was steady and sure. Evelyn felt like she was falling and flying at the same time, like every broken piece of her was being carefully put back together by this good, kind man who had seen her at her worst and still wanted her. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that since the day I met you." "You have very strange timing then," Evelyn said with a shaky laugh. "I was hardly at my best, stealing bread and passing out from hunger." "You were perfect," Isaac said simply. "You are perfect, and I am going to spend every day proving to you that you deserve to be happy." They sat by the creek for hours, talking and laughing and stealing kisses like teenagers. Evelyn told Isaac about her childhood, about her mother whom she had never known, about her father's business and the dreams she had once had for her future. Isaac told her about learning to bake, about the first time he had successfully made a loaf of bread on his own and how proud his mother had been, about his hopes of maybe expanding the bakery someday. "I want to hire help," he admitted. "The work is getting to be too much for one person, especially during the busy seasons. But I have been hesitant because I do not want to let just anyone into my business. It would have to be someone I trust completely." "What about your sister? Could she come back and help?" Evelyn suggested. "Margaret is happy in Santa Fe, and I would not ask her to leave her life there. No, it needs to be someone here, someone who knows the town and the people." He paused, then looked at her with sudden intensity. "What about you, me?" Evelyn blinked in surprise. "Isaac, I do not know anything about running a bakery. I just make food to eat, not to sell. But you understand food, how flavors work together, what people want to eat, and you have already proven you can work hard and learn quickly. I could teach you the business side of things. We would be partners, equal in everything." The offer was tempting, more tempting than it should be. "I cannot just abandon Mrs. Patterson. She has been good to me and she needs the help." "I am not suggesting you abandon her," Isaac said quickly. "Just think about it. We would need to give proper notice, make sure she has time to find a replacement. But Evelyn, imagine what we could build together. We work well as a team. You saw that the morning you helped me with the baking. We could make something really special." "Let me think about it," Evelyn said, though her heart was already saying yes. "I need to make sure I am making the right decision for the right reasons, not just because. Because you care about me," Isaac supplied with a knowing smile. "Yes," Evelyn admitted, feeling her cheeks heat. "I need to know I can stand on my own before I tie my future to someone else's, even someone I care about as much as I care about you." "That is fair," Isaac said, though she could see the disappointment in his eyes. "Take all the time you need. The offer stands, whether we are courting or not. You have real talent, Evelyn, and I think you could be brilliant at this if you gave it a chance." The sun was beginning to set when they finally headed back to town, and Isaac walked her all the way to the boarding house door. Before she went inside, he pulled her close for one more kiss, this one deeper and more passionate than the ones before. "I will see you soon," he promised against her lips. "And Evelyn, thank you for giving me a chance. I will not let you down." "I know you will not," Evelyn said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of work and stolen moments with Isaac. He came by the boarding house whenever he could, sometimes just for a few minutes to see her smile, other times staying for dinner and charming all the boarders with his easy manner and quick wit. On Sundays, they would slip away to their spot by the creek, and Evelyn learned what it meant to be truly courted by a good man. Isaac brought her wildflowers picked from the desert, their bright blooms a stark contrast to the harsh landscape. He took her to the town's monthly dance, where they whirled around the floor until Evelyn was dizzy with laughter. He introduced her to his friends, including the local shopkeepers and some of the other business owners, and she found herself being welcomed into a community she had once been invisible to. But perhaps most importantly, Isaac listened to her. He wanted to know her opinions on everything from politics to philosophy to what kind of pie was the best. He never dismissed her thoughts or made her feel like her ideas were less valuable than his. He treated her as an equal partner in their relationship, and Evelyn found herself blossoming under that kind of respect and attention. Mrs. Patterson noticed the change in her, of course. One evening, about 6 weeks after that first walk by the creek, she pulled Evelyn aside after dinner service. "Isaac Foster is a good man," she said without preamble. "I have known him since he was a boy, and he has always had integrity. If he is serious about you, and I think he is, you could do far worse." "I know that," Evelyn said quietly. "Sometimes I think I do not deserve him." "Nonsense, Mrs. Patterson said briskly. "You deserve every bit of happiness you can find in this hard world, and if you are worried about leaving me in the lurch, do not be. I can find another girl to help. Good ones are not as rare as you might think. You, however, are special, and you should not waste that working yourself to the bone in my kitchen when you could be building something of your own." "He offered me a partnership in the bakery," Evelyn admitted. "I have been too afraid to say yes." "Afraid of what? Succeeding? Being happy? Or are you still waiting for the other shoe to drop, expecting something bad to happen because that is all you have known for so long?" The question hit too close to home, and Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. "All of the above, I think, Mrs. Patterson's expression softened, and she reached out to pat Evelyn's hand. "I understand that fear. I do. I lost my husband 30 years ago in a mining accident, and for the longest time, I was afraid to let myself care about anything too much because I knew how much it hurt when you lost it. But eventually, I realized that I was not really living, just existing, and that is no way to spend the precious time we have on this earth. Take the risk, Evelyn. Let yourself be happy, and if it does not work out, well, you are strong enough to survive that too. But I have a feeling it will work out just fine." That night, lying in her narrow bed, Evelyn thought about what Mrs. Patterson had said. She thought about the woman she had been 6 months ago, desperate and hollow, and convinced she would not survive another week. And she thought about the woman she was now, strong and capable, and surrounded by people who cared about her. Most of all, she thought about Isaac, about the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world, about the future they could build together if she was brave enough to reach for it. The next morning, she sought out Isaac at the bakery during the mid-morning lull. He looked up from the account books he was reviewing, and his whole face lit up at the sight of her. "Evelyn, this is a wonderful surprise. I was just thinking about you. I want to accept your offer," she said without preamble, "the partnership in the bakery. If it is still open, I want to say yes." Isaac was around the counter in 3 long strides, sweeping her up into his arms and spinning her around. "Yes, of course it is still open. Oh, Evelyn, you will not regret this. We are going to do amazing things together. I need to give Mrs. Patterson proper notice," Evelyn said, laughing at his enthusiasm. "2 weeks at least, maybe 3 to make sure she has time to find and train someone new." "Whatever you need," Isaac agreed, setting her back on her feet but not letting go of her waist. "We will do this right the proper way. And Evelyn," his expression turned serious, "this partnership is not contingent on us courting. Even if something happened between us romantically, you would still be my equal partner in the business. I want you to know that." "I do know that," Evelyn said, reaching up to touch his face. "That is one of the things I love about you. You have never tried to make me dependent on you or obligated to you. You have always treated me like I have agency and choice." Isaac stilled, his eyes searching her face. "Did you just say you love me?" Evelyn's eyes widened as she realized what she had admitted. She could have backtracked, could have claimed it was just a figure of speech, but she was done being afraid. "Yes," she said firmly. "I love you, Isaac Foster. I think I have been falling in love with you since the moment you gave me that first cup of water instead of calling the sheriff. You are kind and good, and you make me believe in happy endings again. So yes, I love you." "Thank God," Isaac breathed, and then he was kissing her, right there in the middle of his bakery where anyone walking by could see. "I love you too, Evelyn Garcia. I love you so much it terrifies me sometimes. I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life." "Is that a proposal?" Evelyn asked, half laughing, half crying. "Not yet," Isaac said, pulling back enough to look into her eyes. "When I propose, it is going to be special, romantic, something worthy of you. But I wanted you to know my intentions. I am courting you with the full intention of making you my wife if you will have me." "I will have you," Evelyn promised. "Whenever you ask, the answer will be yes." They stood there in each other's arms, the morning sunlight streaming through the bakery windows, and Evelyn marveled at how far she had come. 6 months ago, she had been stealing bread to survive. Now she was planning a future with a man she loved, a man who saw all of her, the broken parts and the strong parts, and loved her anyway. True to her word, Evelyn gave Mrs. Patterson 3 weeks' notice. The older woman was disappointed to lose her, but genuinely happy for Evelyn's new opportunity. She even helped spread the word that she was looking for kitchen help. And within a week, she had hired a young woman named Sarah who was eager to learn and had a knack for baking that impressed even Mrs. Patterson's exacting standards. During those 3 weeks, Isaac and Evelyn planned their partnership. They discussed menu expansions, supply chains, customer service improvements. Isaac showed her the books, teaching her how to track expenses and profits, how to manage inventory, how to negotiate with suppliers. Evelyn brought her own ideas, suggesting they add lunch items like sandwiches and soup, which could bring in customers during the slower afternoon hours. "We could set up a few tables," she suggested one evening as they sat in the bakery after closing, surrounded by paperwork and half-drunk cups of coffee. "Nothing fancy, just somewhere people could sit and eat. Most of the miners and ranch hands do not have time to go all the way to the boarding house or the hotel for lunch. If we offered something quick and affordable, I think they would come." "That is brilliant," Isaac said, scribbling notes. "We would need to expand the kitchen space, maybe hire someone to help with serving. But I think you are right. There is definitely a need for something like that in Chloride." They worked late into the night, planning and dreaming, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world to be building something together. Evelyn had never imagined herself as a business owner, but with Isaac by her side, she felt like she could do anything. Her last day at the boarding house was bittersweet. Mrs. Patterson threw her a small party, inviting some of the regular boarders and a few people from town who had become friends over the past months. There was cake and lemonade, and several people made toasts to Evelyn's future success. "You came to us with nothing," Mrs. Patterson said, her voice uncharacteristically emotional. "And you leave us as one of the most respected women in this town. I am proud of you, Evelyn Garcia, proud of who you have become and what you have overcome. Now go build something wonderful." The next morning, Evelyn began her new life as Isaac's business partner. They had agreed she would take charge of the kitchen, developing new recipes and managing the food preparation, while Isaac would handle the baking and the financial side of things. They hired 2 young men from town to help with the lunch service, and a woman named Harriet to assist with the baking during busy times. The expanded menu was an instant success. Word spread quickly about the delicious sandwiches, and hearty soups available at Foster's Bakery. And soon the lunch rush was nearly as busy as the morning one. Evelyn found herself in her element, creating daily specials based on what ingredients were available, perfecting recipes, training the staff to maintain her high standards. But more than the business success, Evelyn reveled in the partnership she and Isaac had built. They worked seamlessly together, anticipating each other's needs, supporting each other through challenges, celebrating victories together. It was everything she had never dared to dream of, a true partnership built on respect and love and shared purpose. As summer faded into fall, Chloride began to prepare for the Harvest Festival, a weekend-long celebration that drew people from all over the territory. Isaac suggested they create something special for the event, a signature dessert that would showcase what Foster's Bakery could do. "We should make it together," Evelyn suggested. "Combine your baking skills with my flavoring expertise. Create something that represents both of us." They spent weeks experimenting, testing different combinations of flavors and techniques. They went through dozens of failed attempts, but they laughed through all of them, stealing kisses dusted with flour and sugar. Finally, they created something perfect. A layered cake with Isaac's incredible vanilla sponge, filled with Evelyn's cinnamon apple compote, and topped with a cream cheese frosting that was sweet and tangy and absolutely divine. "It is perfect," Evelyn declared after they had sampled the final version. "It is us. Your foundation, my flair, combined into something better than either of us could have made alone." "Like our partnership," Isaac said softly, pulling her close. "Like our life together. Better together than we ever could be apart." The night before the Harvest Festival, Isaac asked Evelyn to go for a walk. She agreed, curious about his slightly nervous demeanor. He led her not to their usual spot by the creek, but up to the mesa overlooking Chloride, where they could see the whole town spread out below them, lights twinkling in the gathering darkness. "I have been thinking about timing," Isaac began, taking both of her hands in his. "About when the right moment would be the perfect moment, and I realized that there is no such thing as perfect timing. There is only now this moment with you, so I am not going to wait any longer." He dropped to one knee, and Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. "Evelyn Garcia, you came into my life when I least expected it, and you have changed everything. You have made me happier than I ever thought possible. You have challenged me, inspired me, and shown me what true partnership looks like. I want to spend the rest of my life building dreams with you, laughing with you, growing old with you. Will you marry me?" He pulled out a ring, simple but beautiful, with a small diamond that caught the starlight. Evelyn was crying, but she was also smiling so wide her face hurt. "Yes," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Isaac slid the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into a kiss that was full of joy and promise and love. When they finally broke apart, Evelyn looked at the ring on her hand, then at the man beside her, and felt a surge of gratitude so intense it almost brought her to her knees. "I was stealing bread," she said wonderingly. "6 months ago I was stealing bread and you gave me a seat at your table. And now here we are." "Here we are," Isaac agreed, wrapping his arms around her from behind and resting his chin on her shoulder. "And we are only just beginning." The Harvest Festival was a triumph. Their special cake sold out within the first hour, and they spent the rest of the weekend making batch after batch to keep up with demand. People raved about it, declaring it the best thing they had ever tasted. But more than that, people noticed the way Isaac and Evelyn worked together, the easy affection and deep respect evident in every interaction. When Isaac announced their engagement on the second day of the festival, the news was met with genuine celebration. Even Nathan Foster, Isaac's cousin the sheriff, grudgingly offered his congratulations, though Evelyn noticed the way his eyes narrowed when he looked at her, like he was trying to figure out if he knew her from somewhere. She held her head high, secure in the knowledge that she had nothing to be ashamed of. She had been desperate and hungry, but she had never stopped fighting, never given up. And she had found her way to this moment through hard work and determination, and yes, the kindness of one good man who had seen her worth when she could not see it herself. They set the wedding date for late October, wanting to give themselves time to plan but not wanting to wait too long. Margaret traveled from Santa Fe to help with preparations, and Evelyn found herself genuinely liking Isaac's sister, who was as warm and generous as her brother. "I am so glad he found you," Margaret said one afternoon as they sat in the apartment above the bakery, sewing the final touches on Evelyn's wedding dress. "Isaac deserves someone who will appreciate him, who will be a true partner to him, and from what I have seen, that is exactly what you are." "He saved my life," Evelyn said quietly, focusing on her stitches. "I do not mean that metaphorically. I mean he literally saved my life when he caught me stealing that bread. He could have called the sheriff, could have had me arrested and thrown in jail. Instead, he gave me food and shelter and a second chance. I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for that." "He would hate hearing you say that," Margaret said gently. "Isaac does not want your gratitude. He wants your love, your partnership. And from what I can see, he has both of those things. You have given him as much as he has given you, maybe more. Before you, he was lonely, even if he would not admit it. He had his bakery and his routine, but no one to share it with. You brought joy back into his life. You gave him someone to build dreams with. That is not a small thing." Evelyn thought about Margaret's words often in the days leading up to the wedding. She had spent so long thinking of herself as the one who had been rescued, the one who owed everything to Isaac's kindness. But maybe Margaret was right. Maybe this was not about one person saving the other, but about two people finding each other at exactly the right moment and choosing to build something beautiful together. The wedding took place on a crisp October morning, with the aspens turning gold on the mountains in the distance. They held the ceremony at the small church in town, with what felt like half of Chloride in attendance. Evelyn wore her simple dress, handmade but beautiful, and carried a bouquet of dried wildflowers. Isaac wore his best suit, and when she walked down the aisle toward him, the look on his face made her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. "Dearly beloved," the preacher began, but Evelyn barely heard the words. She was too focused on Isaac, on the way his hands trembled slightly as he took hers, on the tears shining in his eyes, on the smile that seemed to light him up from within. When it came time for the vows, Isaac spoke first, his voice steady and sure despite the emotion evident in every word. "Evelyn, when I first met you, I saw someone who was fighting with everything she had to survive. I saw strength and courage and determination, even in your darkest moment. And every day since then, you have shown me more reasons to admire you, to love you, to be grateful that you walked into my bakery that day. I promise to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams as fiercely as I support my own, to laugh with you in good times and hold you through the hard ones. I promise to love you with everything I am, for as long as I live." Evelyn's voice shook as she spoke her own vows, but she forced herself to get through them. "Isaac, you gave me more than food when I was starving and more than shelter when I had nowhere to go. You gave me hope when I thought there was none left in the world. You showed me that kindness still exists, that good people still exist. You made me believe in myself again, made me believe that I deserved happiness and love and a future. I promise to be worthy of the faith you placed in me. I promise to be your partner, your friend, your greatest supporter. I promise to love you with everything I am, for as long as I live." When the preacher finally pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared was tender and sweet and full of promise. The church erupted in applause, and Evelyn found herself laughing and crying at the same time, overwhelmed by joy. The reception was held in the town hall, with long tables laden with food that Evelyn and Isaac had prepared together over the past week. There was dancing and music and toasts that ranged from heartfelt to hilariously embarrassing. Mrs. Patterson gave a speech about how proud she was of Evelyn, and Margaret embarrassed Isaac with stories from their childhood. But through it all, Isaac and Evelyn remained focused on each other, stealing quiet moments amidst the celebration to simply be together. As the sun began to set, and the party showed no signs of slowing down, Isaac pulled Evelyn aside and led her out onto the back porch of the town hall. "How are you holding up, Mrs. Foster?" he asked, pulling her close. "Mrs. Foster," Evelyn repeated, testing out the name. "I like the sound of that, and I am wonderful. This has been the perfect day." "It has," Isaac agreed, "but I am ready for it to be over so we can start the rest of our lives." They had decided to spend their wedding night in the apartment above the bakery, saving a proper honeymoon trip to Santa Fe for later when they could take time away from the business. Evelyn had cleaned and decorated the space, filling it with flowers and candles, making it feel special. When they finally made their excuses and slipped away from the party, the walk back to the bakery felt surreal, like a dream Evelyn kept expecting to wake from. But Isaac's hand in hers was solid and real, and when he swept her up into his arms to carry her over the threshold, laughing at her surprised shriek, she knew this was real. This was her life now. Their wedding night was everything Evelyn had hoped for and more. Isaac was gentle and patient, taking his time to make sure she felt loved and cherished. They talked long into the night, sharing dreams and fears and plans for the future, punctuated by kisses and caresses and murmured words of love. And when they finally fell asleep in each other's arms, Evelyn felt a peace she had never known before, a bone-deep certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The next few years passed in a blur of hard work and happiness. The bakery continued to thrive, and Evelyn and Isaac expanded the business, adding more seating and a wider variety of menu items. They became known throughout the territory for their excellent food and warm hospitality, and their little establishment became the heart of Chloride's social scene. But more than the business success, Evelyn treasured the life she and Isaac had built together. They had their routines, their private jokes, their ways of communicating without words. They had disagreements, of course, moments of frustration or tension, but they always worked through them with honesty and respect. Isaac never tried to diminish her opinions or override her decisions, and Evelyn never took advantage of his generous nature. They were true partners in every sense of the word. 2 years into their marriage, Evelyn discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with a mixture of joy and terror. Evelyn was terrified something would go wrong, that this good thing would be taken from her like so many other good things had been. But Isaac was endlessly patient, reassuring her through every moment of fear, celebrating each milestone with her. Their son was born on a snowy January morning in 1886, a healthy boy with a strong set of lungs and his father's dark hair. They named him Thomas, after Isaac's father, and Evelyn fell in love all over again as she watched her strong, capable husband reduced to tears while holding his newborn son. "Look at him," Isaac whispered, gently touching Thomas's tiny hand. "He is perfect. You are perfect. I cannot believe how lucky I am." "We are lucky," Evelyn corrected, reaching up to wipe away his tears. We found each other and we built this life, and now we have this beautiful child. We are the luckiest people in the world." Motherhood suited Evelyn in ways she had not expected. She loved the weight of Thomas in her arms, the sweet smell of his hair, the way his face lit up when she entered the room. She loved watching Isaac with their son, the gentle way he cradled the baby, the silly songs he would sing during middle-of-the-night feedings, the fierce protectiveness that came over him whenever anyone so much as sneezed near Thomas. They hired additional help for the bakery, so Evelyn could spend more time with Thomas in the early months. But she found she missed the work, missed the creativity and the satisfaction of feeding people. By the time Thomas was 6 months old, she had settled into a new routine, working in the mornings while Margaret, who had moved back to Chloride with her husband after he took a position at the local bank, watched the baby. It was not perfect, and there were days when Evelyn felt torn between her two loves, but Isaac was endlessly supportive, picking up slack when she needed him to, encouraging her to pursue her passion for cooking even as they navigated parenthood together. When Thomas was 2, Evelyn found herself pregnant again. This time, the fear was less intense, replaced by excitement and anticipation. Their daughter, Clara, was born in the summer of 1888, a calm, observant baby who seemed to take in everything around her with serious eyes. "She is going to be smart as a whip," Mrs. Patterson predicted, visiting to meet the new arrival. "I can already tell. She has that look about her, like she is studying the world and figuring out how it works." Mrs. Patterson's prediction proved accurate. Clara walked and talked early, and by the age of 3, she was helping in the bakery, carefully measuring ingredients under Evelyn's supervision and taking her duties very seriously. Thomas, meanwhile, had inherited his father's easygoing nature and his mother's determination, a combination that made him both charming and unstoppable when he set his mind to something. The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. The bakery went through lean times during a particularly harsh winter and boom times when a new mining operation opened up nearby. Evelyn and Isaac weathered it all together, their partnership growing stronger with each passing year. They added another child to their family, a son named Michael, born when Thomas was 7 and Clara was 5. And 2 years after that, their youngest, a daughter named Grace, completed their family. By 1894, 11 years after that fateful day when Evelyn had been caught stealing bread, they had built something remarkable. Foster's Bakery was the most successful business in Chloride, employing a dozen people and serving as a gathering place for the whole community. Their children were healthy and happy, growing up surrounded by love and laughter and the smell of fresh bread. On their 11th anniversary, Isaac closed the bakery early and took Evelyn back to their spot by the creek, the place where he had first told her he loved her. The cottonwood trees had grown taller, and someone had built a small bridge over the water, but it was still their place, still the spot that held so many memories. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Isaac asked, sitting beside her on the flat rock that had become their unofficial bench. "If I had called Nathan that day instead of helping you, I try not to," Evelyn admitted. "It is too terrible to contemplate. I would have died in that jail cell. I was already so weak and Nathan would not have shown me any mercy." "But you did not die," Isaac said firmly, taking her hand. "You lived, you survived, and you built an incredible life for yourself." "We built it," Evelyn corrected. "Together, I could not have done any of this without you." "And I could not have done it without you," Isaac replied. "That is what partnership means. That is what love means. Not one person saving the other, but both people lifting each other up, helping each other become the best versions of themselves." Evelyn leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the water flow over the stones. "I was so scared that day. I thought you were going to call the sheriff, and I thought my life was over. I could not have imagined that the man who caught me stealing would become my husband, the father of my children, the love of my life." "I knew," Isaac said quietly. "Maybe not right away, but soon. I knew you were special. I knew I wanted to know you better, wanted to see you smile, wanted to be the reason you smiled. And every day since then, you have proven me right. You are the strongest, most resilient person I have ever known, Evelyn Foster. And I am so grateful that you walked into my bakery that day." "I am grateful too," Evelyn said, lifting her head to look at him. "For you, for our life, for our children. For every moment we have shared and every moment still to come. I love you, Isaac Foster, with everything I am." "I love you too," Isaac replied. And then he was kissing her, just like he had 11 years ago, full of love and promise and hope for the future. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, they walked back to town hand in hand. They could see their children playing in front of the bakery, watched over by Margaret and her husband. Thomas was teaching Clara how to throw a ball, while Michael toddled after them on chubby legs, and little Grace sat in the dirt, examining rocks with intense concentration. "Look at what we made," Evelyn said softly, overcome with emotion. "Look at this beautiful life we built together." "It is pretty spectacular, is it not?" Isaac agreed, his voice thick with his own emotion. "And it all started with bread. One loaf of stolen bread." "And one kind heart," Evelyn added. "One man who chose compassion over judgment, who saw potential where others saw only trouble." "I saw you," Isaac said simply. "That is all. I saw you, Evelyn, and I recognized something worth saving, something worth loving." They stood there on the edge of town, watching their children play, surrounded by the community they had helped build, living in the town where they had found each other. And Evelyn realized that this was what happiness looked like. Not a fairy tale, not perfection, but real life with a real partner who loved her through all of it. The years continued to unfold, bringing new challenges and new joys. Thomas grew into a young man with his father's skill for baking and his mother's business acumen, eventually taking over more and more of the daily operations of the bakery. Clara became a teacher, opening a small school in Chloride and carrying on her mother's legacy of helping others find their potential. Michael followed his uncle into banking, while Grace, always the dreamer, announced her intention to become a writer and document the stories of the people who had built the West. Isaac and Evelyn stepped back from the day-to-day running of the bakery, though they never fully retired. They spent their days working together in the kitchen, developing new recipes just for the joy of it, teaching their grandchildren to bake, and enjoying the life they had built. On their 25th anniversary, the whole town threw them a celebration. People came from all over the territory, customers whose lives had been touched by Foster's Bakery, employees who had learned valuable skills under Evelyn and Isaac's tutelage, friends who had been drawn into their warm and welcoming orbit. Speech. Someone called out, and the crowd took up the chant until Isaac finally stood, pulling Evelyn up with him. "I am not much for speeches," he began, and the crowd laughed because everyone knew Isaac could talk the ears off a mule when he got going. "But I will say this. 25 years ago, I caught a woman stealing bread from my bakery. I could have called the sheriff. I probably should have called the sheriff, but something told me to offer her a seat at my table instead. And that decision changed my life in ways I could never have imagined. That woman became my wife, my business partner, the mother of my children, my best friend. She has made me a better man than I ever could have been alone. So I suppose the moral of this story is that sometimes, when you lead with kindness instead of judgment, magic happens. Thank you all for being here to celebrate with us. And thank you, Evelyn, for saying yes to that seat at my table all those years ago." Evelyn stood beside him, tears streaming down her face as the crowd applauded. She looked out at all the faces, at the life they had built, and felt a gratitude so profound it took her breath away. "I was lost when Isaac found me," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "I was hungry and desperate, and I had given up hope of anything ever getting better. And then this man, this good, kind man, chose to see my humanity instead of my desperation. He gave me food and shelter, yes, but more than that, he gave me a second chance at life. He showed me that I was still worth something, that I could still build a future. And then he gave me the greatest gift of all. He let me build that future with him. Our marriage has been a partnership in every sense of the word. We have built this business together, raised our children together, weathered storms together, and celebrated triumphs together. Isaac always says I am strong and resilient, but whatever strength I have, I found it because he believed in me first. He taught me to believe in myself. So thank you, my love, for everything. For the 25 years we have had, and for all the years still to come." They kissed to thunderous applause, and the celebration continued late into the night. But through it all, Evelyn kept finding Isaac's hand, kept seeking him out in the crowd, as if to reassure herself that this was real, that this incredible life was truly hers. Later, much later, when the guests had finally gone home and they were alone in their bedroom above the now quiet bakery, Isaac pulled Evelyn close. "Happy anniversary, my love," he murmured against her hair. "Happy anniversary," Evelyn replied, settling into his embrace with the ease of long practice. 25 years. It seems impossible that we have been together so long, and yet I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Here is to 25 more, Isaac said. And then 25 after that, if we are lucky. We have always been lucky, Evelyn said softly. From that very first day when you chose kindness, we have been the luckiest people alive. And as they drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, Evelyn thought about that day one last time. She thought about the desperate woman who had stolen bread, the kind man who had offered her a seat at his table, and the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. It had started with hunger and fear, but it had blossomed into love and partnership, and a life richer than she ever could have imagined. Years later, when Evelyn was an old woman with silver hair and laugh lines etched deep around her eyes, she would sit on the porch of the home she and Isaac had built on the edge of town and tell their grandchildren the story of how she and their grandfather had met. "I was stealing bread," she would say, and the children would lean in, eyes wide, because even though they had heard this story 100 times, it never got old. "And your grandfather caught me. But instead of calling the sheriff, he gave me a seat at his table. And that single act of kindness changed everything. Did you know right away that you loved him?" the grandchildren would ask. "Not right away," Evelyn would admit, "but I knew he was someone special, someone good. And I knew that if I could just hold on a little longer, if I could just keep putting one foot in front of the other, things might get better." And they did. They got so much better than I ever dreamed possible. Isaac would join her on the porch then, moving slower than he used to, but still strong, still steady. He would sit beside her and take her hand, the same way he had been doing for more than 40 years, and together they would watch the sunset paint the New Mexico sky in brilliant colors. "Tell them the rest," Isaac would prompt, even though Evelyn always told the rest. "Your grandfather taught me that kindness matters," Evelyn would continue. "That how we treat people in their darkest moments says everything about who we are. He taught me that everyone deserves a second chance, that one person's compassion can change the course of another person's entire life. And most importantly, he taught me that love is not about grand gestures or perfection. It is about showing up every day and choosing each other over and over again, through the good times and the hard times, until those days add up to a lifetime. The grandchildren would eventually wander off to play, and Evelyn and Isaac would sit together in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching the desert come alive with evening. They would think about the years they had shared, the challenges they had overcome, the joy they had found in each other and in the life they had built. And when the time finally came for them to leave this world, they would go together, as they had done everything else, holding hands in the bed they had shared for so many years. Their children and grandchildren would gather around them, and they would slip away peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they had lived fully and loved deeply and left the world better than they found it. The bakery continued on, passed down through generations of Fosters, each one carrying on the legacy of compassion and quality that Isaac and Evelyn had established. And every year, on the anniversary of the day, Evelyn was caught stealing bread. The current owners would give out free loaves to anyone who needed them, a tradition started by Isaac and Evelyn and maintained by everyone who came after. Because that was the real lesson, the one that Evelyn and Isaac had learned and passed on to everyone whose lives they touched, that when you catch someone at their lowest moment, you have a choice. You can judge them, punish them, turn them away. Or you can offer them a seat at your table, a moment of grace, a chance to be seen as fully human despite their circumstances. Isaac and Evelyn had chosen grace, had chosen each other, had chosen to build something beautiful out of a desperate moment. And in doing so, they had not only saved each other, but had created a legacy of kindness that rippled out into the world, touching countless lives in ways they would never fully know. Their story became legend in Chloride, told and retold until it took on an almost mythical quality. But at its heart, it remained a simple truth. Sometimes, all it takes to change someone's life is a single act of compassion. Sometimes, the person you help will become the person you love. And sometimes, a stolen loaf of bread can be the beginning of the greatest love story ever told. The end.